Now, more of Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the only show directly addressing the problems and solutions for Illinois. Now, from AM 560, here's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Pat Hughes on this edition of Illinois Rising. And Pat, this coming week there are going to be hearings with members of the General Assembly about this veterans home in Quincy. And after a year, the last couple of years of following the failure at the federal level of the VA to properly care for and to care properly for military veterans and families, the numbers staggering. The whistleblowers like Dr. Michael Mann wrote a book about this. So infuriating, frankly, that we're not keeping our promise to veterans. Now we have a problem at the state level. And it's a problem that broke out at this veterans home in Quincy, Legionnaire's disease, that's claimed a dozen lives. And this after the home was given a clean bill of health by, the press release politics of Governor Runner, very much akin to his wine club buddy, Tiny Dancer. Press release politics. I don't actually know what's going on, but everything's great. It's all good. Everybody's a superstar. We're doing things. Actually, you're not.
Yeah, except for the people dying. Everything's great except for people dying.
Unnecessarily dying. This problem going on for more than a year, and the record not reflecting the pronouncements of the political leadership. Maybe if we had a governor who was actually in charge of the state. This became a national story over the holidays, so many people might have missed it. Mike Tobin reporting for Fox News.
Legionella bacteria was detected at the Illinois Veterans Home in Quincy as early as July of 2015, according to the Centers for Disease Control. That's roughly when Korean War veteran Richard French moved in. He was sick. His wife Dolores moved into independent living there to be near him. Friday, August 28th, their son Steve French heard news of a Legionnaire's disease outbreak and called.
It was a pretty quick response. Kind of a casual response saying, nope, your parents are fine. If something happens, we will give you a call. At that time, she was already dead. We found out later that she had been dead for several days.
Everything's fine except my mom's dead. I mean, honestly.
It's astounding.
And so this is notified a year ago, as you heard from the reports, Centers for Disease Control. You have a family member who hears about this, makes the wellness call, gets lied to, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So it's either malicious or incompetence or some combination of the two. But either way, it's horrific. Can you imagine? I'm calling to check on my mom and dad. Everybody's fine. I find out after the fact that my mom was dead when I called to check on her. Wow. So now families are getting engaged and litigating the matter.
WBEZ Public Radio showed the state public health director was aware on August 21st the home was facing the, quote, beginning of an epidemic, but there was no public notification until August 27th. 11 families are now suing for negligence.
And the problem, of course, the problems are layered here, but one of the issues is the population. The same thing happened at the federal level. We're talking about VA hospitals and their failures. Is you're dealing with a population that is least inclined to complain.
Right.
And so if you aren't really taking your job responsibility seriously to properly care for these patients, veterans, their close family, like spouses that are co-located at a place like Quincy Veterans Home so they can be near one another. If you don't see the humanity in people and you don't take this calling seriously, then whether through negligence or something worse than that, people are hurt and people die. And where's the oversight? At the agency level or at the civilian political leadership level? Well, that's something else that Mike Tobin raised in his piece, what the governor has said on the topic versus what we now know.
In July of 2016, Illinois Governor Bruce Rauner said, we're really on top of the situation. Last fall, 3 more residents tested positive for the bacteria. A Korean War veteran with a host of medical problems died.
So I guess...
Not so on top of it.
Not so much.
Dan, the the report is staggering, and it also fits a larger pattern. Now we're moving on to people, and particularly people who are heroes to this country, dying, which makes it all the more tragic. There's a pattern, right? So Bruce Rauner gets up and publicly states that he's not in charge. There's no legislative inspector general for 2 years under ostensibly his watch as supposedly the leader of the state, and there are multiple complaints about sexual harassment and other improprieties. And now we have this story that shows that he really isn't in charge. Like the point,
he meant it.
Yeah, he meant it. The point of being the governor or the leader of a state is so that the government works properly. And if the government isn't going, my tax dollars and your tax dollars aren't going to go to help veterans who need help, in need of it, then what's the point of it to begin with? And so if you're not paying attention to this, mostly because these people are not a political constituency for the governor or Mike Madigan or anyone else. And so that's the problem. It's an ongoing testimonial. And the real thing about it is when Rauner says I'm not in charge and then proves it with this story and with the sexual harassment story, people's lives are impacted in real ways. I mean, when your wife dies, when your father dies, that's a real impact. When you're being sexually harassed, or your mother or your sister or your mom are being sexually harassed, that's life impact on people. And so, it's a indictment of his failed leadership.
And at the agency level, too, where there clearly is not coordination, they're not being detail-oriented, there's not the communication that there should be, particularly on something as important as the provision of health care for anybody, starting with veterans. And you've got the Veterans Affairs Director at the state level said, the cleanest water in the state there at the Quincy Veterans Home. Guess not. She's not in charge either. Boy, it'd be nice if we had some people with the titles that indicate they're in charge actually take charge.